One of the big, hugest, one of the most massive problems that I have with these guys, calling themselves FBA, the Phil Scott, SETI, who else? Phil Scott, SETI, then the main ones who I give my attention to, who I've given my attention to, and who I feel the betrayal by. And we know, you guys, you claim about how much more astute you are than people on the continent as far as African affairs. You speak no African languages, so I don't know how you can feel as though you're more astute of Africa and you speak no African languages. And a lot of the Bantu languages, you can understand each other once you speak those languages. And to not be able to not speak one language and to think that your cultural contributions or your cultural competence is of greater significance than those on the continent is ridiculous. First of all, you shouldn't even be making such a comparison. But but since you are making those comparisons, you need to humble yourself and realizing the shortcomings of your Pan-Africanity. And so we have these self-determined tangibles, these self-determined accomplishments in the Sahel region, where Trump is respecting, even Trump is respecting the Sahel leaders. There's a lot of ground, Neferkari Dessalines is covering the report card on the Sahel states and all of the greatness that they're giving us affirmations and enthusiasm for, confidence for throughout the culture, throughout the world. And so, of course, the enemy wants us to would prefer us to then have separation. You talk about SETI, like I said, I've been watching him since 2008. It was no problem with the continent. Everything was speaking lovely. Why was none of this? Why all of a sudden, this animosity towards the continent, as Traore and Assimi Goïta and Tchani, are reaching the accomplishments for the people. Now it's time to, up the ante of rhetoric against the country, against the continent. You see, and so what you're doing is you're creating indifference so that they pull another move and try to take out another Lumumba, try to take out another Thomas Sankara. Now the people are not in solidarity, to prevent it in the first place. All of this, as I said, everyone's talking about trade, and you guys are trying to add fuel to divisiveness and bickering and disunity. And then if one of our leaders is attacked, this is the state that we're in as a result of this campaign, this anti-African campaign. And so what you guys are doing, as I said, you are removing yourself from consideration as being the voice of keeping the people informed. We're going to have to adjust our, who we trust for journalistic contributions. We're going to have to adjust that. And you guys are ruining your reputation. And it's reprehensible, and you should do better. But, you're making your bed, you're going to have to lay in it. But what you need to do is understand that you're setting an environment. You're setting a dangerous environment for our leadership of our people. You're attacking the executive branch of our leadership when you're attacking all of the rest of the people, because the executive branch of Pan-Africanism isn't speaking against the diaspora. So why are you attacking all of Africa and the leadership of the Africans aren't attacking the diaspora? You see, so that means that you're following the lead of the enemy, all right? Because the leadership of our people is not speaking towards you. They're showing tremendous restraint against your campaign, okay? And so you guys need to You're not going to correct yourself because we're going to continue to reach accomplishments. And so, whatever's influencing you all to continue with this reprehensible behavior is going to continue to force you all up the ante. And the only thing that's going to do is continue to cause your voice to not be given attention from people who are of substance, from people who want from people who want tangibles, from people who want to see progress. All right, from people who understand the goals that we need to be striving towards. Okay, they're not going to get caught up in your, the uselessness of your reparations, false pretenses. Oh, we do 2 paychecks from here and from there. No one's getting behind that. The foreign exchange is your reparations. If you're coming from a Western country, your foreign exchange is the reparations. Okay, if you have intellectual capital. If you have intellectual capital, you're coming over to the continent with the head start. You're coming there with the head start. Okay, but if you don't have any intellectual capital, that's because of your own village, self-sabotage against the household and marriage. Focus on that. Focus on the household and the marriage. As you focus on that and we get results from that, you will have a foreign exchange difference that's going to give you an advantage to go and invest with your brothers and sisters on the continent with. Okay? All the suffering, all the inheritance you was going to get on the continent. Okay? Where you were able to go and build up another country. If you would have been one of in the other tribes, if you'd have been part of the other tribes who were not defeated, you'd have sent your other brother over too. You'd have did the same thing that the brothers who sent us over here did. You'd have did the same thing. Everything was interchangeable. We have the lectures where they're talking about this, where people who assisted then end up being the hunted and sent. And we don't know how many times these cycles were obviously they were repeated, so that there is no clean hand. There is no clean hand in these circumstances. You want to compare the Black Wall Street to the continent. If it was so greater than the continent, why wasn't it sustainable? Why wasn't it sustainable if it was so much greater than the people on the continent at the time that they were reaching these accomplishments? Why wasn't their greatness wise enough to set up a sustainable militaristic environment so that they wouldn't be vulnerable to the airstrikes? Why didn't they have the cultural cohesion? Because they survived the airstrikes, the eldest tell us. They survived the airstrikes. Integration took them out. So why didn't they have the wisdom to have long-term strategy that would enable cohesion that wouldn't crumble under mud makers? Okay, since we're comparing, the greatness of Africa to those who were kidnapped as prisoners of war. Okay, so let's get away from this ridiculous comparisons. Let's get away from setting the environment that our leadership of Pan-Africanism can be vulnerable, and let's either show maturation with our journalistic contributions or self-cancel ourselves. And that's what a lot of these guys are doing. Well, not a lot of these guys. Some of these useless people are doing.